On the way up here to do this, I was saying how it was the perfect day to discuss him, because it's a horrible day. It's rainy and foggy and gloomy. It's crummy, and it suits him. It's the type of person he was. If there's people out there that say they don't believe in evil, it exists. And it lives inside that man. I used to watch these movies on TV all the time about these battered women. And I would sit there and holler at the TV, just leave. I made it in my head seem like it would be so easy. When I became one of those women, it wasn't. No one knows what it's like behind the closed doors. And you can watch horror movies and think, it's never gonna happen to me, but it does. And when it does, you're living your own nightmare. Before I met Anthony, I was married. I had 3 daughters. Me and my ex had a rocky relationship. We had split up, and I was pregnant with my 4th daughter, whose father wasn't in the picture. I met Anthony through mutual friends, and we hit it off, and he took right to the kids. He was so sweet. Seeing him interact with my girls, to me, that was amazing, because my kids are my life. To see someone do something like that, they had to have a heart. I introduced Anthony to some of my family.
All she says is Anthony, Anthony, Anthony.
Oh, well, that's a good thing to hear.
My aunt, she was telling me about rumors that she had heard.
I've been hearing some stuff about Anthony that's not great.
Come on, just a bunch of old girlfriends talking garbage.
There was rumors that he was abusive, that he liked to hit. The biggest rumor was that he couldn't be around kids. Anthony was on the sex offender registry.
Oh, here comes.
Happy day.
What's that?
From watching him with my kids and his demeanor with us, it was hard to believe that he would ever be capable of doing anything to anybody.
I want to play hide and go seek.
You want to play hide and go seek?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
That can't be right. You need to be careful.
And I remember not listening to her. But I did stop for a minute and thought, if this is true, if he can't be around kids, this is it. You know, I want my kids safe. I needed to get to the bottom of it. I needed to know the truth. I had moved into a home that I was renting, and he was traveling back and forth visiting. When we got home, I confronted Anthony.
What's up?
Are you not supposed to be around kids?
His face went sober. It was like there was no expression.
That's something that happened a long time ago.
Anthony told me that it was a misunderstanding. His explanation was, yes, he had done something when he was younger. Something had happened consensual between him and a younger girl.
And we were just kids. She told me she was older than she actually was.
But the mom pressed charges because the girl was under a certain age. He downplayed it. He made it seem like it was someone else's fault, like he didn't do anything wrong.
She was okay with everything. I'll call my doctor, who I was seeing back then. He'll tell you the truth.
At this point, Anthony had called a psychiatrist, a major psychologist in Bangor. To this day, I can't remember his name.
This is Anthony Lord.
And I remember him putting on the speakerphone. And I remember Anthony asking him specifically, can I be around kids? Is there anything wrong with me being around kids?
I understand your concerns, Chief, but I can assure you, you have absolutely nothing to worry about.
And I remember that psychiatrist telling me that there wasn't any issue, that he could be around kids. And I remember talking to him about it and saying, I'm so sorry that I even doubted you for a second. And he said, it's okay. He assured me over and over that that was fine. That was what mothers do. And I remember him always saying, you're a good mom. You did what any mother would do. One day, my biological father had come over to visit. We're sitting in the living room, and my father is telling me about these rumors that he'd heard about Anthony being abusive.
Dad, I've heard it all before.
You need to listen. These are your children's lives.
I know, Dad. I understand that.
And Anthony had come over to visit.
What's going on here?
I'm talking with my daughter. Is that okay with you?
Actually, that's not okay with me.
And at that point, all hell broke loose.
I'm not going to leave my grandkids with a child molester.
I remember my biological father calling Anthony a pedophile and hoping and praying that Anthony didn't swing.
I don't want you around my family.
I don't care what you want.
Because if it got physical, my dad wouldn't have stood a chance. And I remember Anthony saying, don't ever come back here again. And I remember my dad turning, looking at me, and the look on his face was just worry. And he left. When it came to my family and their opinions of Anthony, I was mad. I was mad that they couldn't see how happy the girls were, how happy I was in the beginning. Anthony had told me to not have contact with my father ever again. I didn't need the rest of my family. I just needed him. I chose Anthony over my family. I did. I didn't have anything to do with my family for the longest time. I was living in kind of a rough area. There had been a couple break-ins on the other side of town, and it was a little scary being a single mom with 3 little girls. So one night when I had put the kids to bed, I had called Anthony to say goodnight.
Just wanted to call and say goodnight.
Wait, don't hang up.
When I went to hang up the phone, he had told me, leave it on speakerphone so I can make sure you're safe. If I hear any noises or whatever, I can call the cops. Leave the phone on throughout the night. I'd lay the phone down and I'd put it by my pillow. And if I get up in the middle of the night to go pee, I could hear the TV on the other end. After the first night, it just became a routine. It became something I'd do every night before I went to bed. Looking back now, I see that that was one of the first red flags that I should have seen. He had to have full control, even when he wasn't around. But at the time, it seemed innocent. It seemed like he just wanted to make sure that we were safe. At that point, I was like, you just move in. You can make sure we're safe and you can be here. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought it was gonna make me happier. I thought it was gonna make the kids happier, and I thought he was gonna be happy. I thought I was making the right decision. Never in a million years did I ever think he'd allow something like that to happen. When he first moved in, I felt safe, I felt secure. I felt like we had a cute little family. It's like a joke. Looking at this picture, you see a happy little family. The Anthony in this picture is the good Anthony, the happy Anthony, not the evil side. It's not how he really was, but this is how he portrayed himself to everybody else. Anthony was jealous from the beginning of my ex-husband and Madeline's father. He wanted to be the father figure.
Did you have fun with Daddy? Yeah?
One day, Madeline's father had come over to visit.
I want a popsicle.
No, Maddie, you've had enough sugar already. You know what? You deserve a popsicle. Go on. Come on, man.
And Madeline's father had told him, "You may live there, but you're not her father." And at that point, Anthony lost it.
But you get lost.
And his eyes, it was like they were glazed over. It was a scary look, just maniacal. And it kind of scared me because it was a side of him that I'd never seen before. I remember him telling Maddie's father that he knows where he could hide a body and they'd never find it.
No one will be able to find you. I swear to God, you won't ever see your daughter again.
I remember looking at Maddie's dad and like, just enough's enough.
Just please calm down. Don't push it.
It was like he conquered Maddie's father. It was all about control and jealousy. Anthony got off on that. My ex-husband had found out a lot of the details about Anthony's past. When we got into court, I had found out that Anthony had molested his 6-month-old niece. I got in a fight with him that night. And I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not a fighter. But I wanted to kill him.
You said it was some girl you knew almost your age? It was your niece.
No one like that should be alive. No one should be able to hurt someone that little.
6 months old?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Anthony told me that if I loved my family and I was smart, I wouldn't leave. Your grandparents are old. They wouldn't be able to fight me off.
You will not go anywhere.
Your aunt and uncle live away from everybody. No one would hear a gunshot. My father could disappear, and they'd never find bones.
No one would ever be able to find them.
I remember smacking him, and I learned never to do that again. I learned in that moment, you did what he wanted. If you didn't, you were gonna hurt.
If you ever leave, I will track you down.
Anthony told me that I would never be able to hide from him.
There is nowhere on earth you could go to get away from me.
Who would miss you anyways? And then I thought about my kids. I knew deep down that if I left, he was gonna come after me. I truly believed that it could be fatal if I left. Madeline was allowed to stay. Her father wasn't fighting for her. So Madeline was allowed to stay in the home. One night we had a get together at the house, and Anthony had some friends over that I'd never met before. We were just sitting in the living room having a few drinks. And they had more ideas than just drinking. I remember getting up to go to the bathroom. And coming back. And I remember Anthony saying, "You're his." And I remember getting pushed over on the arm of the couch. And Anthony's friend got to have his way with me, and it didn't matter if I said stop or no.
Shut your mouth.
Anthony enjoyed seeing me in pain. Never in a million years, as possessive and controlling as he was, did I ever think he'd allow something like that to happen. I remember him laughing about it. And I remember him telling me that I was his and I would do whatever he said. After that night, I started to think about different options on how to get out. But then thought about the consequences of it and just didn't dare make a move. Just got worse after that. Not long after that night, Anthony wanted someone else to be a part of the relationship, I guess. There's these sites that you get on online. He'd sit there and pick out what he wanted, like a grocery store.
There's a room upstairs for you. You want to put your stuff down?
Okay, great.
All right.
What is this?
Cindy's going to be staying with us for a little while.
I'm not into this.
I expressed the fact that that wasn't me. That wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted.
You didn't seem to have a problem with it the other night.
But Anthony had told me that I should be okay with bringing another person into the relationship because I let his friend have sex with me and I didn't do anything more to stop it.
I'm gonna go check on her. See how she's doing.
He just wanted 2 girlfriends, I guess. At first, I thought maybe it'd take some of the attention off me.
Jamie, get in here right now!
Multiple times, I wished it would just end. Multiple times, I wish I could just die. When she came and she moved in with us, I'd never been in that position.
Come on, Jamie.
I remember being in the bedroom. He wanted me to watch and have sex with the 2 of them.
That's it. That's my girl.
And I remember at one point, he told her to hit me.
I need you to hit her.
And she acted like she was gonna do it to make him happy.
I can't.
She stopped herself and she didn't hit me. He realized that he didn't have full control over her, and she wasn't gonna sit there and hurt me for his satisfaction.
You need to get out of here.
So he was ready for her to leave. She walked out that door and she never looked back. I was envious that she got to leave. He let her go. I didn't have that option. He had told me that everything that you do, you don't do without me. We shower together. If I went in to go to the bathroom, he would follow me in the bathroom. I was not allowed to talk to my mother unless it was on speakerphone. But sometimes I'd sneak in calls.
Hey, Mom.
There was one phone conversation that I had with my mom that sticks out.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, we're doing okay. Anthony's out.
He had come home that day. And I was terrified when I heard the door open. It's like you're paralyzed in the moment. I didn't know what to do.
Jamie, can you hear me? Hello? Jamie?
And all I could hear my mom saying was Jamie. Jamie.
Jamie?
And there was a mop bucket that I hadn't emptied yet. And he took my phone. And just dropped it in the water. So for the better part of a month, if not longer, I had no contact with anybody. No one. He really didn't let me go get a job. All the money that came in, he had control of it. I was under his thumb. And that's how it was. Total control. Brittany Irish had been a friend of Anthony's, and I had met her a couple times. Anthony had always had a crush on her. He had told me they were just friends, but ultimately I knew something was going on, more than just friends.
I'll be home after work. Kids are asleep, Jane will be asleep. All right.
They were very hands-on with each other. It wasn't just a hug. It was more of an embrace. It was something you do with someone that you were in a relationship with. I didn't care. I thought multiple times that he may become obsessed with Brittany and become so obsessed that he'd let me go. That would be my out. Me and my daughter could just leave and we'd be free of him.
Oh, here you go.
We were on the deck one day, Brittany, Anthony, myself. Anthony had made this huge declaration.
You know what? We should have kids.
I got plenty.
Well, I meant both of you.
Me and Brittany kind of looked at each other and just chuckled, like, you're joking, right?
You both should have my kids.
he wasn't joking. He was really serious. This is what's gonna happen. And we were supposed to go by it.
Damn it, Jamie!
Anthony became irate with me, and the next thing I remember, I was at the bottom of the stairs. Brittany hadn't stayed with us very long. She left and went back with Kyle, her ex. I think they'd worked things out and wanted to make it work for their children. Him not being able to have control of Brittany, I think that's what threw him over the edge. Almost every day there was gonna be a beating. Without a doubt. Some days not as bad as the others. But it still happened.
Damn it, Jamie!
One day, he had been agitated, and I remember feeling something on my lower back. And the next thing I remember, I was at the bottom of the stairs. I went to stand up, and I couldn't stand up. My foot was shattered.
Anthony, please.
Get up.
I can't.
What do you mean you can't?
I can't. It's broken.
Anthony became irate with me when I said I couldn't stand up. He told me I was faking. He kicked my foot, and when he kicked it, I could hear it crunch. And it was the most excruciating pain I have ever felt in my life. But he smiled when he kicked it. There was no remorse. There was no feeling sorry for me. When we arrived at the hospital, Anthony says she tripped on her pant legs. And the doctor looked at me. He asked me if I felt safe at home. Of course, I said yes. I knew better than to show any signs of me looking for help. I knew there'd be consequences to pay. And as time went on, the beatings got worse. And at the end of it, you just wish you could curl up and die. A couple of times I thought I was going to, but I didn't. I truly believed I was in hell. I dreaded waking up in the morning. I thought about killing him multiple times. I thought it would end my misery. He wouldn't be able to hurt anybody else. But I didn't have it in me. I could never follow through with anything like that. He seen money signs when I said it. I could see his eyes light up, like he was gonna have more money. I became more hopeful that I'd have a way out if I was earning my own money. My plan was to have saved up enough money and at that point, leave while he was gone. Maddie was at the babysitter's. I knew I could do it. That night, I was 10 minutes late getting out of work. That's all, just 10 minutes. Anthony was mad, and he said, "You need to get in here right now, you cow."
Get in here right now!
And I knew that it wasn't gonna be good.
I'm sorry.
He grabbed me by the throat and slammed me up against the door to go outside. And I remember everything fading, getting blurry. And then I remember waking up on the floor, hearing Maddie crying.
Mommy!
So I grabbed Maddie and I told Maddie to run.
Baby, we gotta go now.
And I got her, we got next door. The neighbors opened the door and we got inside and they were dialing 911. And the guys whose house it was, he didn't know what was gonna happen, but he was gonna make sure that he protected his home and protected us until the cops arrived.
Okay.
Anthony kind of stood there and looked at us for a minute and was saying, "You need to come back. Don't you do this."
Jamie, come on. You don't know what you're doing. You're making a mistake.
I'm not.
Jamie!
I did know what I was doing. He was scared and said, I know you're gonna leave. And turned around and went back into the house. And I remember thinking, that was too easy. What now? The cops came, and to see them turn him around, make him put his hands behind his back and see him handcuffed, it was the best day of my life. It was over. I remember begging and pleading with that judge to lock him away and not let him out. And he got 3 months. And the judge told me that per cases relating to domestic violence, that's the average time that's awarded. The temporary restraining order was granted for me and the kids. And I laughed in their faces and said, "What is that piece of paper gonna do? Just a piece of paper, it's not gonna stop him." He was gonna come after us. I knew he was. That was just what he was gonna do. There's an incoming call and I answer it. It's my aunt saying, "Where are you? Are you safe? Are you safe?" Anthony's gone on a rampage. After he was released, no matter where I went, no matter what I did, it seemed like he was there. He would drive past the house, back and forth. He would park across the road and stare at me. I would contact the police. The police would tell me it's a public road, they can't stop him. He was within the frame of so many feet. Anthony was walking a thin line. He knew the boundaries, and he stayed right at the edge of those boundaries. It got so bad that when I would come home from work, I would make sure the windows were locked. I would pull the shades. And I had 3 locks on every door. Every little noise, I never knew if it was just the neighbors next door or he was trying to get in a back window. I told myself that I wasn't gonna be afraid. I was gonna show him that I'm not scared of him, that he lost that control. But I always thought about the worst scenarios. What was gonna happen? My cell phone didn't charge the night before. And I remember being so angry that it hadn't charged. And I turned my phone on, and it's beeping nonstop. And there was numerous messages from my mom and my aunt.
Hello?
Jamie, are you okay?
There's an incoming call, and I answer it. It's my aunt saying, "Where are you? Are you safe? Are you safe?" Anthony's gone on a rampage. What do you mean? What do you mean?
He shot a bunch of people.
Anthony had shot 5 people. 2 of them died. 3 of them survived, but he had also kidnapped Brittany. Anthony had been seeing Brittany on and off, so the rumor mill is Brittany was visiting him, and one night she didn't show up, and that's what set this off.
Law enforcement responded to a series of incidents that began late last evening and ended with a shooting of 5 people and the beating of another man. The suspect is Anthony Lord, 35 years old, from Crystal and Sherman. He's described as 5'9", 260, blonde hair and blue eyes. If the public has any further information, please contact the Maine State Police.
That's one of the few news tidbits that I watched on Facebook. At that point, no one knew where he was. No one knew what was going to happen, who was safe, who wasn't. Ultimately, I thought he was coming for me or Maddie, or both of us. I'd hear bits and pieces that someone had been shot, and then not hear anything for the longest time. No one knew updates, no nothing. And just bunkered down, hoping and praying that he didn't know where we were. We received the call that he had been taken into custody. He had surrendered. And it was just a sigh of relief. There's no way a judge can let you off on this. There's no way. I can honestly say that's the first time I've ever seen that footage. I love it. I think they were too gentle, cuffing him. That right there was the beginning of my freedom. The chance for me to be able to live my life and actually live it.
He had brought me to a remote cabin where he had strangled me with a seatbelt, tied me up in a cabin, and left me. He had assaulted me 4 times. And he shot Kyle right in front of me. I didn't have a chance to say anything or stop anything from happening. I have to tell my children why they don't have a father.
My heart aches for her in that video. And for her boys. No parent should have to explain something so horrific to their children. No one deserves that.
I want him to go to Bangor. You want to go to Bangor to do what? See Jamie. See Jamie. So if you got gotten to Bangor and seen Jamie, would you have used the gun to get her to tell you the truth? You would have used a gun.
It's too bad he didn't use that gun and shoot himself. He was too much of a coward to shoot himself, but he could shoot an innocent person. Sitting in a jail cell for the rest of his life is too good. He deserves to be in the ground.
'Cause
It was the biggest relief ever. There's no chance he's getting out. There's none. He can't hurt me. He can't hurt anybody else. But a part of me wants him to suffer. I wouldn't get hit again. That day, it hit me that I was going to be able to gain my life back. It feels like a lifetime of heartache. But I'm at a place in my life where I can be happy, and I don't have to be afraid. Me and my ex-husband are co-parenting.
The night the ground seemed to swallow a life whole began with an ocean wind that tasted faintly of metal, as if something in the air already knew what was coming. Fog rolled low over the UC Monterey campus, spreading across the parking lots like a white animal circling its prey. Students hurried through it with hunched shoulders, clutching backpacks, muttering about midterms, unaware they were walking through a moment that would haunt California for more than 2 decades. At 9:46 p.m., Elena Marquez stepped out of the library, her breath forming small, nervous clouds. She was 21, bright, ambitious, and carrying 3 criminology textbooks she'd checked out hours earlier. Witnesses remembered her, smiling politely at the front desk, but something sharper hid behind her eyes. A flicker of unease, a tension in the way she kept scanning behind her. Later, when detectives re-watched the grainy footage, they slowed it frame by frame, hoping to catch something, anything, in the corners of the screen. But the camera revealed only Eleanor, small against the glowing exit sign, pushing out into the night as if stepping into a story she never would have chosen. She walked toward the east parking lot, the quiet one where the lights always flickered. Some students avoided it, others laughed off the rumors of break-ins and odd shadows, but Elena crossed it quickly, hugging her books close. At 9:49, 3 minutes after leaving the library, she vanished. Not slipped away, not wandered off. Vanished, cleanly, silently, leaving behind parking lot so empty it became disturbing. No screams, no stalled engines, no dropped belongings. The next morning, her roommate found her bed untouched, her lamp still on, and her phone charging on the desk. A call to campus police set off the chain reaction that would shape the next 26 years. Officers cordoned off the lot by dawn. They brought in dogs, searched storm drains, questioned night shift workers, checked security logs, traced bus routes, interviewed students who had been within a quarter mile. Nothing. The only item later discovered was a lone silver key ring lying near a drainage grate outside her apartment complex, found 81 hours after she disappeared. Too clean, too deliberate, as if placed with intention, not dropped. The first press conference hit local TV like a shockwave. College student missing without a trace. The words echoed through Salinas like a warning. People left porch lights on through the night. Teenagers who once roamed freely after dark suddenly walked in pairs. Mothers gripped their children harder. And somewhere in the middle of that panic sat Elena's mother, staring at an empty bedroom, whispering the girl's name over and over, as if repetition alone could anchor her back into existence. Detectives constructed timelines, sketched maps, studied her habits. She had no current boyfriend, no history of mental illness, no family disputes, no secret double life. Her professors adored her. Her classmates described her as focused, grounded, disciplined. She was majoring in criminology, ironically studying the very investigative patterns that would later be used to try to find her. But none of her case studies prepared anyone for the black hole at the center of this disappearance. Because this wasn't a runaway. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This felt like orchestration. 3 days later, an unsettling discovery emerged near the campus dumpsters. A janitor spotted a crumpled ball of paper shoved behind a recycling bin, library receipts from Elena's checkout that night. They were stained with something brown and brittle. At first, it was dismissed as dirt or spilled coffee. Later, the forensics team would realize the truth had been hiding in those stains all along. The investigation split into frantic branches. Some detectives believed she had been stalked. Others pushed the theory of a calculated abduction by someone familiar with the campus layout. But one lead overshadowed the rest. A dark sedan seen idling near the east lot around the time she vanished. The witness, a security guard, couldn't recall the license plate, the exact model, or even the color. Only that the car felt wrong, a phrase too vague for court but sharp enough to embed itself deep in the detectives' minds. By week 2, the case turned far stranger. A letter arrived at the Salinas Police Department, handwritten in thick black marker, addressed simply to investigators. Inside was a single sentence. "You're wasting time. She's not where you think." No threats, no signature, no fingerprints, no DNA. Intentional minimalism, like someone was taunting the officers, nudging them away from a direction only they knew was wrong. Some believed it was a prank, but the timing, too fresh, too close, made it impossible to ignore. The letter poured gasoline on a community already burning with fear. As fall turned to winter, the search expanded beyond the campus. Helicopters combed the Monterey hillside. Drones flew low over ravines and abandoned sheds. Divers swept lakes. For every new clue, another dead end emerged like a cruel counterweight. The weeks filled with candlelight vigils, community pleas, reward posters taped to storefront windows. Her face, dark hair, quiet smile, hopeful eyes, became a symbol of a nightmare no one understood. And then came January. A hiker trekking through the Toro County hills found a scrap of pink fabric snagged on a broken branch. The terrain was rugged, remote, not a place anyone would accidentally wander into. The color matched the blouse Elena wore the night she disappeared. Panic surged through the investigation. The search teams gathered with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Dogs barked wildly, boots pounded through dirt and brush. Every snapped twig felt like a clue. But after 3 exhaustive days, nothing else surfaced. Not a footprint, not a bone, not a strand of hair. Just that one scrap of fabric, hanging like a ghost signal in the cold wind. It raised a question detectives didn't want to voice. Had someone planted it? By the 8th month, leads withered. The file thickened with evidence that meant nothing. Interviews circled the same phrases. She was kind. She had no enemies. She wasn't the type to disappear. Eventually, the story slipped from headlines. Students graduated. Apartments changed tenants. The lot where she vanished was repaved. The world moved on in the way that life always does, slowly, then all at once. Only the Marquez family remained anchored to the past, waiting for answers that never came. Years stacked on top of years. Detectives rotated in and out of the case, each convinced they would be the one to crack it. Each left defeated. The case became a training reference for new investigators, evidence that even the cleanest lives can be swallowed by the darkest secrets. Every once in a while, a caller would report a sighting, usually a false alarm. Rumors drifted through the town like dust. A theory about a serial predator, a whisper about a jealous classmate, a rumor linking Elena to someone powerful. But nothing stuck. Nothing held. Nothing pierced the fog. Until April 2024. A young lab technician named Marcy Duran, newly hired to assist with a statewide DNA reprocessing initiative, opened the Marquez evidence box. Her task was routine: test old materials using updated mitochondrial extraction methods. She swabbed every item, even the ones previously deemed clean. When she reached the crumpled library receipts, the ones found behind the dumpster, she hesitated at the brittle brown stains. She placed them under high-resolution extraction. And then the world shifted. It wasn't dirt, and it wasn't coffee. It was degraded biological material, barely there, damaged, fragile, but present. And new technology doesn't need much. When the results finally processed, the screen lit up with a genealogical match that nearly made Marcy drop her coffee. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a known criminal. It wasn't a distant cousin. It was a close familial match. A male relative, close enough to share blood with Elena, close enough to have known her routines, close enough to have stood next to her at family gatherings, holiday dinners, birthday celebrations. And suddenly, a case that had chilled for 26 years began to thaw with explosive heat. Detectives swarmed the Marquez home, not with sirens, but with restrained urgency, carrying questions they weren't sure anyone wanted answered. Was there anyone Elena avoided? Anyone she feared? Anyone whose presence made her uncomfortable? The room tightened with discomfort. Some relatives exchanged glances heavy with hesitation. Others looked away entirely. A name surfaced, softly, reluctantly, almost trembling. And just like that, the cold case cracked. Not solved, not closed, but ruptured, like a buried fault line shifting beneath the family's feet. DNA had done what decades of searching could not. It pointed inward, and the truth, long buried and festering beneath silence, began to rise. The moment the name slipped into the open, barely louder than a breath, the air inside the Marquez living room changed. It thickened, tightened, as if the walls themselves were waiting for what would happen next. Detectives exchanged quick, sharp glances, not of triumph, but of caution. Every cold case detective knows the most dangerous moment of an investigation comes when the truth finally stops hiding. Because truth rarely emerges politely. It claws its way out. The name belonged to a man who, on the surface, had lived an ordinary life. Married once, briefly, worked construction, moved between counties, no criminal record, no documented history of violence. But he was older than Elena by 8 years, and during her childhood, he had been a familiar figure at family barbecues, holiday dinners, and birthday parties where plastic tablecloths fluttered in the wind. A cousin on her mother's side. Not a direct cousin. Family trees twist in complicated ways, but close enough to borrow tools, close enough to babysit once or twice, close enough to be trusted. And trust is the softest armor a victim wears. Detectives asked when anyone last saw him. A cousin answered, "He drifted. He always did." Another relative muttered that he had moved north years before Elena disappeared. But then an aunt contradicted that, saying she remembered him showing up unexpectedly in Salinas around September 1998, saying he needed work, saying he needed a place to stay. Memories clashed in real time. Some foggy, some clear, some suspiciously selective. The detectives watched it unfold with professional detachment, but private dread. Because if the DNA pointed inward, the motive might too. They left the house with a list of names to interview, but one name sat at the top. The man who had quietly vanished from family gatherings after Tuthan. The man who never returned to funerals, birthdays, reunions. The man whose photograph had been tucked at the back of a drawer and never spoken of again. Detective Marlowe drove the unmarked sedan through the fading afternoon light, tapping his fingers along the steering wheel, not out of impatience but to ground himself. Cold cases gnaw at investigators, and this one had been gnawing at him long before he officially took it on. He remembered studying it at the academy, memorizing Elena's face, frustrated that the case had no ending. And now the ending seemed much closer, close enough to feel, close enough to taste. And yet he knew not to trust that warmth. Cold cases have a habit of pretending to thaw just long enough to freeze you in place again. They began with public records. A search revealed the suspect, Miguel Alvarez, had lived in 3 counties since 2000. He held different jobs: landscaping, warehouse loader, part-time mechanic. No marriages since the first one, which ended abruptly. No children. Several addresses. Nothing that screamed criminality. Yet there were shadows between the lines: evictions, sudden relocations, gaps in employment, nights spent in motels that didn't ask questions. But the strangest detail wasn't the instability. It was the pattern. Every move took him further north, away from Salinas, as if outrunning a memory that could keep pace no matter how far he went. Detectives tracked his current residence to a small town near Redding, tucked between pine trees and highway dust. A trailer park. Unit 14. They approached without sirens, without urgency in their footsteps, but with the careful tension of people stepping into an old story that might suddenly turn violent. When they knocked, the door opened too quickly, as if he had been waiting. Miguel stood in the frame with tired eyes, stubble gathering across his jaw, a sweatshirt creased from use. He did not ask who they were. He did not ask why they were there. He only stepped back and said, "I knew this day would come." And that sentence floated in the detectives' minds like smoke. Ambiguous, dangerous, heavy with implication. Inside, the trailer smelled faintly of engine oil and burnt coffee. A muted television flickered in the corner. The detectives remained standing. Miguel remained seated. They began with routine questions: where he was living in 1998, his relationship with Elena, how often he visited Salinas, what he remembered from the weeks surrounding her disappearance. He answered without hesitation, but every answer felt too prepared, too smooth. He said he liked Elena but didn't know her well. He said he hadn't been near the campus in years. He said he worked 2 jobs in 1998 and could barely remember the month, let alone the day she vanished. He said he moved north because he wanted a quieter life. The detectives never told him about the DNA. They simply watched him, quietly measuring the tremors in his voice, the tension in his hands, the way his foot tapped the floor when the questions edged too close. They ended the interview without accusations, leaving him in his trailer, watching them through a thin curtain long after they walked back to the car. Back at the office, Marlowe stared at the evidence board. Elena's smile glowed from the center. Strings of red thread pointed in every direction, some faded from years of exposure to light. Miguel's photo sat newly tacked in the upper corner, a fresh wound in a case full of old ones. Marlowe knew they needed something stronger. DNA was a start, but proximity alone was not a verdict. They needed location data, receipts, witnesses, dates, anything linking Miguel to the campus the night she disappeared. For days the team dug: old pay stubs, time cards, utility bills, motel check-ins. But 1998 records are unforgiving. Companies had closed. Storage warehouses had flooded. Databases had crashed. Paper files had been shredded. A trail once walked had eroded to dust. And just when the tension inside the department began to stretch thin enough to snap, a call came from a retired patrol officer who had seen the renewed news coverage. He said he remembered something odd. Back in October '98, he stopped a car near Chwala for a busted tail light. The driver seemed nervous. The car was a dark sedan. The officer couldn't remember the driver's face, but he remembered the name on the license: Alvarez. He had written it in his old patrol log. The log still existed. He kept it in a box in his garage. He said he would look. 2 hours later, he called back. He had found it. October 3rd, 1998. 10:17 p.m. A dark blue sedan, scratched bumper, faulty tail light. Driver: Miguel Alvarez. Destination: just passing through. The stop happened less than 12 miles from the campus. The information hit the department like a bell tolling through fog. Meanwhile, Miguel was spiraling. Detectives monitored him discreetly from a distance, noting how he paced outside his trailer at odd hours, how he made long phone calls and hung up abruptly whenever a car passed, how he locked windows even in midday heat. Something was unraveling, something old, something he spent years burying. Detectives returned to interview him a second time. This time, Miguel asked for water before they even sat down. His hands trembled slightly. They didn't accuse him. They wanted him to talk, to slip, to reveal something that could bridge 26 years of silence. And he did, not with a confession, but with a detail he didn't realize was dangerous. When they asked whether he had been anywhere near Salinas that October, he said firmly, "No, I hadn't been back since summer." But the patrol log said otherwise. And lies in cold cases are like cracks in ice. Small at first, then catastrophic. They left him again, knowing the pressure was building. At night, Marlowe sat alone in the office, replaying the case files, studying the psychology of familial predators. They're not like strangers. They don't stalk with the same methods. They blend, observe, wait for a moment where access is natural. They rely on trust, and trust leaves no fingerprints. Miguel fit the behavioral patterns too easily, too neatly, like a puzzle piece that had been hiding in plain sight. The detectives combed the trailer park area for people who knew him. A neighbor remembered him fixing his car late at night. Another recalled hearing him argue on the phone about someone asking questions. A clerk at a nearby gas station recognized his photo and said Miguel once asked if surveillance tapes were kept for a long time. All fragments, all suspicious, none definitive. Then came the breakthrough that felt almost supernatural in its timing. A woman from Miguel's past, his ex-wife, responded to a message investigators left weeks earlier. She lived in Oregon now, remarried, raising 2 children. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to remember. But when she heard the name Elena, her voice cracked. She began describing things that chilled the detective's blood. Miguel's temper, his unpredictability, the way he obsessed over people who didn't appreciate him, the way he spoke about cousins in the family with a strange possessiveness. She described an incident where he returned home late one night in 1998, shaking, smelling of gasoline and earth. She said he locked himself in the bathroom for an hour. She was too scared to ask what happened. Every word tightened the noose. Detectives brought this information to the DA. The DA wanted more. Cold cases crumble under thin evidence. They needed physical proof, something that touched 1998 directly. And proof sometimes appears where no one is looking. A forensic analyst re-examining the keyring found near Elena's apartment noticed microscopic scratches on the metal. Parallel, uneven, inconsistent with simple pavement friction. Under magnification, the scratches matched the type produced by a very specific car model's door latch, a 1990s Honda Accord. Miguel owned a dark blue 1992 Honda Accord in 1990. The file was no longer cold. It was boiling. Detectives decided to bring him in, but when they arrived at the trailer, the door was open, the lights on, and the air felt stale. The television flickered, unattended. A cup of coffee sat on the counter, still warm. But Miguel was gone. Footsteps in the dirt outside led toward the tree line. The detectives followed. The ground was uneven, scattered with pine needles and broken twigs. The path grew darker, and for a moment it felt like the night of October 3rd had returned. Fog rolling in, wind whispering through branches, something unseen waiting just beyond the shadows. Miguel had vanished, just like Elena, and the chase for truth was no longer a slow excavation of the past. It was suddenly alive, moving, dangerous, unfolding in real time. The forest swallowed sound the way deep water swallows light. Each step the detectives took into the tree line felt like entering a place that didn't want them there. A place that had learned over decades how to keep secrets buried beneath pine needles and damp earth. The flashlight beams sliced through the darkness in narrow cones, illuminating drifting pollen, twisted branches, and the faint shape of footprints pressed into the soil, fresh, hurried, leading deeper. Miguel wasn't running in panic. He was running with purpose. And that terrified Marlowe more than anything. Cold case suspects rarely flee unless something inside them cracks, unless the past finally catches up to the present with a force strong enough to break bone. But Miguel's path was too steady, too determined. He knew this area. He had a destination in mind. The detectives followed, their breaths short, boots sinking into soft mud. Far off, a coyote howled, a long rising note that made the night pulse with unease. The wind picked up, rustling the branches in frantic whispers. Marlowe raised his hand, signaling the team to slow. A snapped twig echoed somewhere ahead. Then silence again, heavy and thick. 100 feet deeper, the footprints vanished into a patch of hard, dry soil. Marlowe crouched, sweeping the flashlight in circles, searching for anything. Broken moss, displaced leaves, bent grass. But the trail had dissolved, as if Miguel had stepped out of the world entirely. The team fanned out. Radios crackled softly. The darkness watched with unblinking stillness. Then a glint. Something metallic reflected a strand of light from Detective Ruiz's flashlight. Half buried beneath pine needles lay a small object, cylindrical, rusted at the edges. Ruiz lifted it carefully with gloves. A spent shell casing, not old enough to be from hunting season years prior, not weathered enough to have been lying there for months. It was recent, hours at most. The detectives froze. Marlowe's heart hammered. Miguel was armed, and if he was cornered, a man who'd been running from something for 26 years would not go quietly. They called for backup, but response time would be long in this remote stretch. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before Miguel decided whether he wanted to surrender or disappear again. Then came the sound. A soft, low hum, mechanical, almost vibrating through the ground. Not an engine, not a drone. Something far more unsettling. A generator. Marlowe motioned the team forward silently. They moved through the trees until the forest thinned, revealing a clearing carved into the hillside. Old metal sheets leaned against tree trunks. Tires stacked in crooked columns. Scrap parts littered the ground. And at the center stood a small shed with a flickering light bulb buzzing angrily overhead. The generator rattled beside it, coughing fumes into the air. The shed door was ajar. The detectives approached with the slow precision of bomb technicians. Marlowe nudged the door open with the barrel of his flashlight. Inside, the air smelled of gasoline, mildew, and something faintly chemical. Tools hung on hooks. A workbench was cluttered with bolts, spare wires, a cracked radio. But the most disturbing object was on the far table, a small metal box, open, containing charred fragments of what looked like old photographs. Ruiz stepped closer. The edges of the pictures were melted, warped, but one corner had survived enough to show part of a face. A young woman's cheek, a familiar curve of a jaw. Ruiz's breath caught. It was Elena. They sifted through the box. Some fragments contained handwriting. Notes scribbled in black pen. Dates. Locations. Words that barely survived the fire. Watching. She didn't see me. She walks alone. Cold night, don't forget. Marlowe felt the room tilt slightly, like gravity had shifted. This wasn't a hiding place. This was a shrine to an obsession. The shed held more. A drawer full of old cassette tapes. Maps of Salinas streets from the late 1990s. A torn brochure for the UC Monterey Library. A collection of newspaper clippings yellowed with age, each one featuring updates, however small, on Elena's disappearance. Some circled in red ink, some annotated with frantic handwriting. Ruiz whispered, "He's been reliving it for years." Marlowe didn't respond. Something at the bottom of the drawer had caught his eye. A key. Old, worn, with a faded blue tag. The tag read, T12 Campus Lot, the very lot Elena vanished from. Before he could speak, a twig snapped outside. The detectives spun toward the doorway, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting into the night, but the clearing was empty. The wind stilled. The generator sputtered, then died, plunging the shed into silence. Then a voice cut through the dark. "You shouldn't have come here." The detectives pivoted, flashlights sweeping the trees. Miguel stood at the edge of the clearing, half in shadow, half illuminated by the pale moonlight. His hands were empty, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with a strange mixture of fear, anger, and something far more dangerous, relief. Marlowe stepped forward. "Miguel, we need to talk." Miguel shook his head slowly, not in defiance, but in resignation. "It won't matter. Not anymore." Ruiz's grip tightened on her weapon. "Where's the gun, Miguel?" He didn't answer. He stared past them, at the shed, at the generator, at the pieces of his life scattered like debris from a wreckage. "I kept hoping it would stay buried," he murmured. "But things don't stay buried. Not forever." The detectives moved to flank him, but Miguel took a single step back. Not to flee, not to fight, but as if retreating into a memory only he could see. "You think I took her?" he said. "Everyone will think that now. Maybe they always did. Maybe I let them." His voice cracked at the edges. "But you don't understand. I wasn't running from what happened. I was running from what I saw." Marlowe froze. "What you saw?" he repeated quietly. Miguel's breath trembled in the cold air. "You think I'm the only secret in that family?" Silence fell with the weight of a falling tree. Before Marlowe could ask anything else, Miguel turned and sprinted into the woods, disappearing between the trees with startling speed. The detectives gave chase, flashlights jerking wildly through branches, thorns scratching their arms, adrenaline burning in their blood. But the forest swallowed Miguel again, consuming him without a trace. They searched for an hour, then 2. Reinforcements arrived. Drones were launched. K9 units combed the area. Tracks were found, then lost. The night grew thicker, cooler, more hostile. By dawn, Miguel Alvarez had vanished completely. Yet the shed remained, full of evidence, full of obsession, full of decay, and full of truth waiting to be extracted one unbearable puzzle piece at a time. The tapes were taken to the lab, the maps photographed, the notes preserved. Over the next days, analysts transcribed the recordings. Most were ramblings, Miguel talking to himself in the late hours, recounting memories, rehearsing truths and lies. But one tape stood out from the rest. A man's voice, not Miguel's. Older, slower, heavy with frustration. "Leave it alone, Miguel. You don't want to get involved. Trust me." Miguel's voice responded, younger, brittle with fear. "But I saw him. I saw—" The tape ended abruptly. Cut, deliberately. Investigators replayed it dozens of times. Who was the older man? What had Miguel seen? Why cut the tape? Why hide it in a shed miles from civilization? The deeper they went, the darker it grew. Back in Salinas, Elena's mother sat on her porch, staring at the horizon as if waiting for her daughter to step out of it. She heard about the shed. She heard about the tapes. She heard Miguel had vanished. And something in her expression shifted. Not relief, not hope, but recognition. Quiet, hesitant recognition. That afternoon, she called Marlowe. "I didn't tell you everything," she said. "I didn't think it mattered then." Her voice wavered. "There was someone else. Someone who didn't want her studying criminology. Someone who thought she was looking into things she shouldn't." Marlowe gripped the phone tighter. "Who?" he asked. A pause, wind against the receiver, a heartbeat of silence. "My brother," she whispered. "Her uncle." Marlowe closed his eyes. Another relative, another branch of the family tree twisting into darkness. This case was no longer a simple story of predator and victim. It was becoming something far more tangled, far more insidious, a network of secrets layered over generations, each one buried under another, until DNA pried the first crack open. And the deeper they dug, the more one truth emerged. Elena hadn't vanished because of one man. She had vanished because of something the entire family had spent decades trying not to see. The moment the word uncle fell from Elena's mother's lips, The investigation shifted like a tectonic plate grinding beneath the surface. Something old, older than Miguel's fear, older than the shed filled with obsession, was stirring beneath the Marquez family history, cracking open seams that had never been meant to see daylight. Marlowe kept his voice steady on the phone, but the room around him sharpened into a cold, vibrating clarity. He asked her to repeat it. She did. A single syllable that felt too small for the weight it carried. Brother. She provided a name. Rafael Ortiz, her older brother, a man who drifted in and out of the family circle like smoke, sometimes present, sometimes vanishing for months. Always polite, always distant. He had never been a suspect. He had never been interviewed beyond a cursory early check-in during the chaotic days after Elena disappeared. He had seemed cooperative, calm, grieving. And grief is a mask that fits too easily. Marlowe drove to the Ortiz residence as the sun dipped behind the hills, dragging shadows across the valley. Rafael lived alone in a modest house on the edge of town, white paint peeling, yard overgrown, porch light flickering like a dying heartbeat. As Marlowe approached, he noticed something unsettling. The mailbox stuffed with unopened envelopes. Not days old. Weeks. Maybe months. He knocked once. Twice. No answer. A dog barked in the distance. A loose shutter flapped against the house with hollow thuds. Marlowe circled to the backyard. Through a window coated in dust, he saw a table with half-finished puzzles, an open notebook, and on the far wall, photographs pinned in careful rows, corners aligned with eerie precision. Marlowe felt a chilled pulse in his spine. He stepped closer, squinting through the glass. Faces stared back at him. Elena. Her mother. Cousins. Family gatherings. A Christmas dinner from years before. A picture of Elena at age 13, blurred at the edges but unmistakably her. None of the photos looked violent, but the way they were arranged, symmetrical, deliberate, felt wrong in a way that words couldn't capture. An archivist's devotion mixed with a predator's focus. Detectives obtained a warrant. By nightfall, they entered the house. The air inside was stale, the kind that clings to your clothes long after you've left. Every window was shut, the curtains drawn. Dust lay thick on the furniture, disturbed only where objects had been moved recently. Rafael Ort was not there, but his presence was everywhere. The wall of photos stretched wider than Marlowe initially realized. Dozens of images, some decades old, some new. Many of them featured Elena. At school, at family parties, standing next to her mother, laughing with distant relatives. Some looked like they were taken from far away, zoomed in. Too grainy, too angled, too secretive. "What was he watching?" Ruiz whispered. Marlowe didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on a single picture near the center of the wall. Elena at the UC Monterey Library entrance, taken sometime in 1998. She wasn't smiling. She was glancing over her shoulder, her expression tight, anxious. It matched the security footage from the night she vanished. They searched the house methodically. The bathroom cabinet held nothing unusual. The bedroom seemed untouched. Bed made, closet half empty, drawers containing shirts folded not neatly but obsessively, aligned to the edges. A stack of old magazines sat beside the bed, each one bookmarked with scraps of paper containing handwritten notes. Most were cryptic. Names, dates, small phrases repeating like incantations. She knew. Too close. Family must stay protected. It was supposed to end there. In the kitchen, a calendar hung on the fridge. Every month from January to April had the same date circled in red ink. The 3rd. October 3rd, November 3rd, December 3rd, every 3rd circled. The day Elena vanished. Ruiz exhaled slowly. He was marking anniversaries, but the living room held the darkest secret. Under a loose floorboard, found only because Marlowe noticed faint indentations, as if someone had repeatedly lifted it, lay a small locked wooden box. They pried it open carefully. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a silver necklace, Elena's, confirmed instantly. Her mother had described it countless times in old interviews, a gift from her father, engraved with a tiny star symbol near the clasp. Elena wore it the night she disappeared, and here it was, hidden under Raphael's floor for 26 years. Marlowe closed the box with a trembling hand. This was no longer speculation. This was no longer coincidence. The truth was rising like a thunderhead. But then Ruiz noticed something else, a faded slip of paper tucked beneath the cloth. She unfolded it carefully. It was a torn note, written in Raphael's careful looping handwriting. I warned him not to go near her. I told him she would tell. Now everything is falling apart. Two pronouns hung heavy in the air, him and her. Miguel had said he saw someone, that he wasn't the only secret. Had he seen Raphael? Had Raphael seen him? Had they watched each other circling the same girl, one out of obsession, the other out of fear? The detectives took the evidence and left the house under the harsh glare of police floodlights. But as Marlowe locked the door behind him, a cold question settled in his gut. Why would Raphael keep the necklace, the photos, the notes, and then disappear just as the investigation began closing in? Unless someone had warned him, unless someone had reached him first. Back at headquarters, the room hummed with urgency. Analysts pieced through the tapes from Miguel's shed again, slowing them, amplifying them, using new filters to clean background noise. More voices emerged, some barely audible, some distorted, but one stood out. A woman. Soft, controlled, saying, "Leave the past alone. It will destroy all of us." The analysts couldn't identify the speaker, but Marlowe suspected they didn't need to go far to find her. Elena's mother was brought in for questioning. Not because she was a suspect, there was no evidence of that, but because she was now at the center of a collapsing web of family secrets. She sat across from Marlowe, hands clasped tightly, knuckles white, eyes red but dry. He showed her the necklace. She gasped once, a sound painful enough to echo. Then he showed her the photographs. Her breath faltered. Then he showed her the note. Her shoulders sank. "I knew something was wrong back then," she whispered. Raphael never liked how close Elena was getting to her father's side of the family. He said she asked too many questions. He said she was digging into things that were none of her concern. "What things?" Marlowe pressed gently. "I never knew," she said. He refused to explain. "But he warned me once, told me if Eleanor kept pushing, someone would come after her." "Someone? You mean him?" A long silence. "No," she said finally. "He was afraid of someone else. That's why he was watching her. He wasn't protecting her. He was monitoring her. He thought if he kept track of her, he could prevent something." "Prevent what?" "That I don't know," she whispered. But the night she disappeared, Raphael showed up at my house. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He just stood outside, staring. When I opened the door, he walked away. No emotion. Nothing. I told the police back then, but the report got lost. Raphael had been watching Elena not because he wanted her, but because he was terrified she was uncovering something buried in the family's past. But the question loomed, what had she found? And why was Miguel also connected? As the detectives left the interview room, a young analyst approached with a printout in her hand. She was pale, shaking slightly. "You need to see this," she said. It was a report from the state's genealogical DNA system. A supplemental branch match connected Rafael Ortiz and Miguel Alvarez in a way no one had noticed before. They weren't cousins by marriage. They weren't distant relatives. They were half-brothers, same father. A father who had died in 1997, 1 year before Elena vanished. A father with a sealed criminal record from the late 1970s. A father once questioned, though never charged, in the disappearance of a young woman whose body was never found. A father who had lived for years in a small house 5 miles from UC Monterey. And suddenly everything tilted. The obsession, the fear, the monitoring, the vanishing, the lies. This wasn't about one predator. It was about a legacy of violence spanning generations. But as Marlowe processed the revelation, another alert came through dispatch. A sighting. A man matching Rafael Ortiz's description. Walking alone near the Salinas riverbed at dusk, moving slowly, as if he were headed somewhere he had been before, somewhere familiar. Somewhere he thought the truth still waited. Marlowe grabbed his coat without a word. The hunt was no longer about unraveling a cold case. It was about confronting a family history steeped in secrets darker than anyone imagined, and stopping a man who might be ready to finish what began 26 years ago. The riverbed at dusk looked like a scar carved across the land, a place where twilight hesitated instead of settling. Dry patches of cracked earth stretched between pools of slow-moving water, each one reflecting the fading sky in broken fragments. Trees leaned over the edge as if listening. When Marlowe arrived, the wind carried the faint smell of algae, oil, and something older, like wet stone soaked with secrets. Uniforms were already there, scattered along the narrow path. Flashlights cut through the half-light. A deputy pointed upriver. He was seen heading that way, alone. Marlowe moved fast, boots scraping the gravel, breath steady, mind racing through every image of Rafael Ortiz that had emerged in the last 24 hours. The photographs pinned with unnatural symmetry, the necklace sealed under a floorboard, the anniversary dates encircled again and again like ritual markings, the bloodline connection to Miguel, the father whose record whispered of a woman gone missing decades earlier. A man watching his niece not out of desire, but dread. And now he was here, walking toward something he hadn't visited in 26 years. Somewhere he thought the ending still lived. They found his footprints first. Distinct, deep, leading to a cluster of reeds. Then a scrap of fabric caught on a branch, dark blue, frayed at the edges. Recent. The river hummed quietly beside them, carrying silt and time. As the light dimmed, Marlowe scanned the landscape. The riverbed twisted into a narrow corridor between two slopes, one dotted with abandoned pipes and broken concrete, leftovers from an old irrigation project that never reached completion. It was the kind of place teenagers dared each other to explore, the kind of place predators sometimes used to disappear into shadow. No houses, no witnesses, just the memory of water and silence. A radio crackled. Ruiz's voice drifted through. "We're canvassing downstream. Nothing yet." Marlowe pressed on alone, drawn by a rustling sound up ahead. Not animal. Human. Careful. Intentional. He slowed, stepping lightly, ducking beneath low branches. Then he saw him. Rafael Ortiz stood near a collapsed concrete pipe, half illuminated by the last shred of sunlight. His posture was slouched, but not weak, more like a man exhausted from carrying something too heavy for too long. He didn't turn as Marlowe approached. He kept staring at the pipe's dark opening, as if waiting for a voice to echo back. Marlowe stopped 10 feet behind him. "Rafael!" Rafael didn't startle, didn't even flinch. He exhaled slowly. "I knew you'd find me. You left your house in a hurry. That usually means someone's running from something." "I wasn't running." Rafael's voice sounded brittle. "I was returning." "To what?" Silence floated between them like fog. Rafael finally turned, and in the fading light, his face looked older than his years, lines etched deep, eyes hollow. "You think I hurt her?" he said. "Everyone will jump to that now. We found her necklace in your home." "I know. You kept photos of her, notes, surveillance pictures. That's not normal behavior." A faint smile flickered on his lips, but it wasn't amusement. It was tragedy. "Normal," he repeated softly. "You don't grow up in our family and learn anything about normal." Marlowe studied him carefully. "Then help me understand." Rafael looked back at the pipe's opening. "This was the place we used to come when we were kids. Me and my brother, before everything went wrong, before he became someone I didn't recognize." His voice quivered once. "Before he ruined everything." Marlowe felt his heartbeat shift. "Your father?" Rafael closed his eyes, as if the word itself hurt. "He wasn't a father. He was a shadow wearing a man's skin. Miguel and I, we were born into his silence, into his rage, into his secrets. He taught us things no child should know. His hands trembled. This place, this is where he brought us to hide things, to bury things, to teach us how to keep quiet. A cold breeze swept through the riverbed, rattling reeds like dry bones. Marlowe stepped closer. What did he bury here, Raphael? Raphael swallowed hard. Not what, who? Marlowe froze. Raphael continued, broken and trembling. There was a girl. Not Elena. Long before her. I was only 12. Miguel was 15. We saw him drag her body into that pipe. We saw the blood. We saw him come out with dirt on his hands. And he told us, if we ever spoke, he'd put us in there next. A wave of nausea hit Marlowe. We have no record of that. There was no record, Raphael whispered. He buried the girl. He buried the truth. And he buried us with it. Marlowe felt the forest lean closer, as if absorbing each word. So when Elena started studying criminology, Raphael continued, she dug into local cases for her projects. She looked into missing persons from the 70s. She wrote notes. She asked questions. His voice cracked. She found the name of the girl their father killed. And you thought she was in danger, Marlowe said quietly. I knew she was. His breath shuddered. Miguel knew too. He worshipped our father, even after he died. He believed everything the man said, especially about protecting the family, especially about silencing threats. The truth clicked into place with brutal clarity. Are you saying Miguel hurt her? Marlowe asked. Raphael shook his head violently. No. Miguel saw her talking about the case. He panicked. He confronted her. I was there. I saw it. I followed them because I thought he might lose control. Marlowe's pulse surged. Followed them where? To the campus, Raphael whispered. To the parking lot. The riverbed seemed to go still, as if listening. Raphael continued, voice raw. Miguel grabbed her arm. She got scared. She tried to pull away. She told him she was going to report everything she found. She said she had proof. He was terrified that she'd expose our father. He begged her to stop. He told her our family would be destroyed. She didn't listen. And then he stopped. Marlowe leaned forward. And then what, Raphael? She fell, Raphael said. He tried to grab her again. She stumbled backward and hit her head on the pavement. Hard. Too hard. Marlowe's stomach twisted. That wasn't an accident, he said. It wasn't murder either, Raphael insisted desperately. He didn't mean to hurt her, but the moment she hit the ground, he lost his mind. He tried to wake her, but she didn't move. He kept saying he didn't want her to die. He kept crying. Raphael's voice thinned to a whisper. I wanted to call for help, but Miguel said no. He said if the police came, our father's crimes would come out. He said the family would suffer. He said Eleanor was already gone. And what did you do? Marlowe asked, though he dreaded the answer. Raphael's eyes glistened with decades of guilt. I helped him. The air froze. You moved her body, Marlowe said, barely breathing. We panicked, Raphael said softly. We were broken boys raised by a monster. We didn't know what right looked like. Miguel dragged her. I couldn't stop him. We took her away from campus, to the hills, to the spot our father used before. Marlowe felt cold all over. Where is she, Raphael? His voice cracked despite himself. Tell me where she is. Raphael's lips trembled. He pointed toward the slope above the riverbed. There's an old drainage tunnel, covered by rocks now. We sealed it. I can show you. Marlowe signaled for backup. Officers surged forward, hands gripping flashlights, shovels, evidence markers. Raphael led them up the embankment, each step trembling under weight of the truth he had carried for 2 decades. Halfway up the slope, Raphael stopped. He pressed his hand against a mound of rocks arranged in what looked like a natural collapse. But it wasn't natural. It was deliberate. This is it, he whispered. Officers began moving rocks aside. Dirt crumbled. Air seeped out from the darkness like a long-forgotten breath. The opening widened. Flashlights probed the black. Then a deputy called out shakily, There's fabric! Something blue! Marlowe's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his teeth. Another voice. Bones. Ruiz whispered. Oh, God. The tunnel had become a tomb. The evidence was overwhelming. The remains matched the clothing described in the 1998 report. The necklace found in Raphael's home had been removed. The soil preserved traces of fabric fibers, hair, and calcium deposits. Time had consumed much of her, but the truth finally stood in the open, sharp and undeniable. Raphael sank to his knees. I wanted to stop him, he said. I should have stopped him. Marlowe stood over him, voice hollow. Where is Miguel now? Raphael shook his head, eyes empty. He ran because he thinks you're coming for him. And he'll do anything, to protect her. Protect the lie our father built. And you? Marlowe asked quietly. I came here, Raphael said, to break it. For the first time in 26 years, the riverbed felt like it exhaled, but the truth hadn't finished unraveling. As they pulled Raphael to his feet, a dispatcher's voice cut through the radio. Be advised, we have a new sighting. Miguel Alvarez, heading south on Highway 101. He's alone. He's agitated. A beat, then a second message. And he's armed. Marlowe looked toward the horizon, where the last sliver of sun sank behind the hills. The cold case wasn't over. It was about to erupt. Highway 101 at night was a black vein running through California's spine, pulsing with headlights and secrets. The asphalt shimmered under the thin moonlight as cars cut through the darkness like fleeting ghosts. Patrol units lined the overpasses, officers gripping binoculars and radios, scanning every lane for a blue sedan that had slipped through the state's fingers for 26 years. Miguel Alvarez was out there, driving fast, driving scared, driving with a gun in the passenger seat and the weight of a lifetime pressing into his chest. Marlowe sat in the lead cruiser, thumb drumming the steering wheel, mind replaying Raphael's confession in an endless loop. Elena collapsing against the pavement. Miguel hovering over her. Fear-drowning reason. A body carried into the hills, a tunnel sealed with stones. And then two men spending the rest of their lives trapped inside the echo of that night. But something still didn't fit. If Miguel had truly adored his father, why would he build a shed full of burned photos? Why run now? Why hide recordings of someone telling him to stay silent? And why had he said he saw someone that night if Raphael was already there? Marlowe had learned long ago that confessions don't always reveal truth. They reveal guilt. And guilt is messy, fragmented. It mixes memory with fear until even the person holding it can't tell which part is real. The radio crackled sharply. Unit 12 reports sighting. Blue Honda Accord. Older model. Southbound. Speeds fluctuating. Marlowe straightened in his seat. Location? Passing mile marker 30, drifting between lanes. Drifting meant distraction, or indecision, or desperation. Don't engage, Marlowe ordered. Follow from distance. Maintain visibility. The night tightened around the highway. Sirens stayed off. Lights stayed dark. The chase had begun long before this moment. It began in 1998. But now it was here, alive, breathing, matching the rhythm of Miguel's trembling hands on the steering wheel as he sped southward. Marlowe leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Where are you going, Miguel? The question wasn't for the radio. It was for the ghosts riding in the back seat of his mind. And then Miguel answered, not with words, but with action. The blue sedan took the exit onto a rural road that led east, away from the city lights, into a stretch of farmland and abandoned packing plants. A place no one drove at night unless they had a reason. Marlowe felt his chest tighten. He's going somewhere specific. Ruiz, following in the second cruiser, radioed in. This road dead ends near the old Marquez ranch. Elena's grandparents' land. Of course. Accelerate, Marlowe snapped. Intercept before he reaches the ridge. The cruisers surged forward, engines growling. Dust billowed behind them as the road narrowed. The headlights skimmed over rusted fences, gnarled trees, silhouettes of barns decaying into the soil. Up ahead, Miguel's taillights flickered like dying embers. Then everything exploded. Miguel swerved abruptly, skidding across gravel. the sedan spinning sideways before slamming to a stop inches from a sagging fence. He didn't turn off the engine. He didn't step out. He just sat there, the car trembling beneath him. Marlowe's cruiser screeched to a halt. Officers spilled out, forming a semicircle, weapons raised but fingers steady. "Miguel!" Marlowe shouted. "Turn off the car and step out slowly." No response. The engine growled unevenly, choking on its own fumes. "Miguel, listen to me!" Marlowe tried again. "No one wants this to end badly. Step out of the vehicle." Lights bathed the sedan in glaring white. Silence stretched, thin, dangerous. Then Miguel's shadow moved. The driver's door opened a crack. A foot emerged, then a trembling hand gripping the doorframe. He stepped out slowly, eyes wild, sweat slicking his hair to his forehead. His clothes looked like he'd been running through branches, dirt streaking the fabric. But the most terrifying detail was the gun in his right hand, dangling at his side, loosely, unpredictably. A ripple of adrenaline shot through the officers. "Miguel," Marlowe said softly, stepping forward, palms open. "Put the gun down." Miguel shook his head violently. No, I know how this goes. You'll make me the villain. You'll say I killed her. You'll say it was me." His voice broke into sharp, splintered fragments. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he said. "I never meant to. Raphael, he's painting me as the monster. But he was there. He saw everything. He saw more." Ruiz whispered behind Marlowe. "He's unraveling." Miguel's eyes locked onto Marlowe's with desperate intensity. "You think you know the truth, but you don't. You don't understand what it was like growing up with him." Him again, their father. Marlowe kept his voice level. "Then help me understand. Tell me what happened." Miguel's chest heaved. Tears streamed down his face, cutting lines through the grime. "I tried to warn her. I told her to stop digging. I told her she didn't know what she was getting into." "What was she getting into?" Marlowe asked quietly. Miguel laughed, a short, broken sound. "You really don't know. All these years and you still don't see it?" "See what?" "The truth," Miguel whispered. "The truth that didn't die with him." The gun lifted slightly, not at the officers, but at the empty night behind them, as if pointing to a memory only he could see. "Raphael followed us that night," Miguel said. "He wasn't trying to stop me. He was trying to stop her." Marlowe felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Raphael said—" "I know what Raphael said," Miguel snapped. "He's been twisting the story since the day it happened. He always blamed me. He always made himself the victim. But he was our father's favorite. He was the one who learned to hide things better. He's the one who learned to finish what he started." Marlowe's pulse hammered. "What are you saying?" Miguel's hand tightened on the gun, knuckles white. "She didn't just fall, Detective. She didn't just slip. Someone else was there. Someone who didn't want her talking." The night seemed to hold its breath. "Raphael?" Marlowe asked slowly. Miguel's voice cracked. "He grabbed her, not me. He grabbed her, and she hit her head, and I—" His breath hitched. "I panicked. I tried to stop him, but I was too scared. I did what I always did. I followed orders." It didn't match Raphael's story, but broken men build broken memories. "Put the gun down," Marlowe repeated gently. "We can figure this out. Together. But only if you put the gun down." Miguel closed his eyes, and then something inside him shattered. He lifted the gun, not toward the officers, but toward himself. "No!" Marlowe shouted, lunging forward. The sound split the night, a violent crack that echoed across the empty fields. Birds fled the trees in panicked bursts. Dust lifted from the road in trembling ripples. Miguel collapsed in the dirt, the gun falling from his grasp. Officers rushed toward him. Ruiz dropped to her knees, pressing gloves against his wound. Blood spread across his shirt like dark ink, pulsing with every heartbeat. He was still conscious, barely. Marlowe knelt beside him. "Stay with me, Miguel. Stay with me. We need you." Miguel's lips parted, trembling. "You'll never believe me," he whispered. "I will," Marlowe said. "I swear I will." Miguel's breath rattled. His eyes flickered like a dying light. "He came back that night," he rasped. "Not Raphael. Him. Our father. You think he was dead. But he wasn't. Not yet. He came out of the tunnel. He saw her, His words dissolved into a choking gasp. Ruiz looked up, horrified. "We're losing him! Miguel!" Marlowe shook him. "Finish it! Tell me!" But Miguel only mouthed one final word. Barely sound, barely shape. "Tunnel." And then his body went still. A long silence stretched across the fields. Officers lowered their heads, but Marlowe stayed frozen, staring at the empty space where Miguel's last breath lingered in the air. Because one detail broke him open. Miguel swore their father wasn't dead in 1998, which meant everything the family believed, everything Raphael believed, everything the records stated, everything buried under death certificates and memories might be wrong. Their father might have been alive, and if he was alive, he might still be out there, somewhere in the dark, somewhere waiting, somewhere watching. The cold case had cracked open, but the truth hiding inside was far more dangerous than anyone expected. The hospital lights flickered like nervous eyes, humming faintly as if aware of the truth unraveling within their walls. Miguel's body had barely been wheeled through the emergency bay before a swarm of medical staff descended on him, pushing adrenaline, hooking machines, shouting clipped commands that bounced down the sterile corridor. Marlowe stood at the glass, hands braced against the frame, watching a life drip away with every passing second. Ruiz paced behind him, radio in hand, face carved with exhaustion. Neither spoke. Words felt too fragile for a moment like this. Through the glass, Miguel's chest rose and fell erratically, shallow, fading. Electrodes clung to his skin. Blood stained the sheets. But Marlowe's focus wasn't on the medical chaos. His mind was caught on a single impossible sentence. He came back that night. Our father wasn't dead. It clawed at the back of his skull, burrowing deeper, refusing to let go. Raphael had said their father died in 1997. Death certificate, funeral, burial plot, end of story. But if Miguel was telling the truth, or believed he was, then either Raphael had lied, or the entire family had constructed a false death to bury a monster no one wanted alive on paper. A doctor stepped out of the room, peeling off her gloves. "He's unstable," she said, voice taut. "We're fighting for him, but you should prepare for—" Marlowe cut her off. "I need him conscious, even briefly." She stared at him, startled. "Detective, he has a gunshot wound through the chest. He's losing blood faster than we can replace it. If he survives the next hour, it'll be a miracle. Then let me talk to him before the miracle runs out." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped in frantic rhythm. Miguel's eyelids fluttered weakly as Marlowe approached. His lips were pale, every breath a battle. But when Marlowe leaned closer, Miguel's eyes opened just enough to recognize him. "Miguel," Marlowe said softly, "I need you to stay awake. I need you to tell me what you meant. You said your father wasn't dead." A faint grin twitched on Miguel's cracked lips, a broken, delirious smile. "He lied. He lied about everything. Raphael believed him. Everyone did. Tell me, Miguel, did he fake his death?" Miguel coughed, pain twisting through him. "Not fake. Just unfinished." His voice rasped like sandpaper. He was sick, dying. But he didn't die then, not like they think. He disappeared, went back to the hills, back to the place he always went. "The tunnel," Marlowe whispered. Miguel's eyes focused sharply for a second, like he was finally seeing someone clearly after years of blurred memory. "You have to go back," he said, breath shallow, fading. "Go back to where he kept the others." Marlowe's pulse thundered. "Others? Miguel, what others?" But Miguel's gaze drifted past him, locking on a point behind Marlowe's shoulder, somewhere invisible, somewhere far away. His lips moved, but no sound emerged. A final breath trembled in his chest. Then nothing. The machines screamed their flatline. A doctor surged forward, shouting for compressions. Nurses scrambled. The room flooded with frantic motion. But Marlowe didn't hear any of it. All he heard was the word others. He walked out into the hallway, every step slow, heavy, vibrating with the weight of a revelation that neither Raphael nor anyone else had ever dared to offer. Ruiz approached, breath uneven. "Marlowe," he said there were others. Marlowe murmured. "Not just Elena. Other victims." Ruiz's expression hardened. "We need to confirm Raphael's father's death. Pull every file, every record." They raced to the station. Analysts ripped open old archives, searching for burial certificates, hospital logs, funeral home receipts. The deeper they dug, the more troubling the pattern became. There was a death certificate, yes. A burial plot. But no embalming records. No medical examiner signature. No official body identification. The funeral had been a private affair handled entirely by Raphael and a cousin. When the investigator pulled up the cemetery log, something snapped audibly in the room. The plot registered as purchased, but never used. No body had ever been interred. The certificate was real. The burial was not. The blood in Marlowe's veins turned cold. Raphael's father hadn't died in 1997. He had vanished. A predator slipping into the wilderness. A ghost waiting for his sons to protect his secrets. Ruiz whispered, "Dear God." But Marlowe already knew what needed to happen. "Pack gear," he said. "We're going back to the hills." The hills loomed under a moon half hidden by clouds, casting the terrain in a shifting gradient of silver and shadow. The search team gathered at the base of the ridge. Officers, canine handlers, forensic techs. Everyone moved with quiet urgency. The air felt electric, charged with something ancient and wrong. Marlowe led the climb, boots crunching through brush and loose rock. Ruiz followed close, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. The higher they ascended, the more the world below faded to darkness. Only the wind kept them company, a hollow whisper slithering through the trees like a warning. They reached the tunnel where Elena's remains had been discovered earlier. Crime scene tape fluttered like yellow flags in the breeze. The rocks piled at the entrance had been removed by forensic crews, leaving a gaping black mouth in the hillside. "This isn't the place," Marlowe murmured. Ruiz frowned. "What did you mean?" "He hid Elena here, but Miguel said their father kept the others somewhere else. Where he always went. This wasn't his place. This was theirs. There's another site." Ruiz swept her flashlight across the ridge. "How do we find it?" Marlowe didn't answer. His mind sifted through Raphael's words. "He brought us here to teach us to hide things. This is where he dragged her body. This is where he buried the girl before Elena. No, something off. A puzzle piece turned the wrong way." He knelt, tracing the soil around the tunnel with gloved fingers. The earth near the entrance had been disturbed, but not uniformly. Some sections were looser, lighter. The stones out front were angular, broken, unnatural. A memory sparked. The irrigation project, abandoned decades earlier. Collapsed pipes, unfinished trenching. A network of underground channels. Ruiz gasped softly. "You think he used the old system?" Marlowe stood abruptly. "Not think! No!" They split into teams, following the remnants of the irrigation routes. Buried concrete tubes, rusted vents, half-visible grates swallowed by thorn bushes. The beams of their flashlights cut over sunken areas in the soil where the old structures had caved in long ago. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then a shout tore through the night. "Detective, over here!" Marlowe sprinted toward the voice, Ruiz at his heels. At the bottom of a shallow ravine, a metal grate lay half-torn from its hinges, the soil around it sagging inward. The opening beneath was large enough for a person to crawl into. Ruiz knelt. "This goes underground." Marlowe lowered himself to the edge. A cold draught rose from the darkness, damp, stale, smelling faintly of rot. "Get the generators," he ordered. "We need light." Minutes later, portable flood lamps bathed the ravine in harsh white glow. With ropes anchored and masks secured, Marlowe descended first, dropping into a cylindrical tunnel lined with cracked concrete and spiderweb-thin roots. The air was suffocatingly still. The beam of his flashlight pierced a corridor stretching deeper into the earth. Behind him, Ruiz landed lightly, breath unsteady. "God," she whispered, looking down the dark passage. They walked slowly, footsteps echoing. The tunnel branched off in odd angles, left, right, descending, rising. Every wall bore the marks of age, flaking concrete, rusted bolts, moss growing in soft clumps. Then they reached the first room, an underground chamber no larger than a basement pantry. And in the center, lying in a shallow depression covered with a layer of dust and time, was a pile of bones. Small bones. Female. Ruiz clapped a hand over her mouth. Marlowe's voice echoed hollowly. The girl Raphael mentioned. But there was more. Much more. They continued through the branching tunnels. Each turn led to another chamber, and in each chamber, a body, or what was left of one. Some were decades old, reduced to skeletal fragments. Some had remnants of clothing still clinging to them. One body still wore a bracelet. Plastic, cracked, but readable. A missing person name Marlowe instantly recognized from a 1981 case file. Ruiz whispered, he was a serial predator. Their father was a serial predator. A cluster of moths erupted from a corner as they passed, scattering like ashes. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of decades of silence. Then Marlowe saw something etched into the wall, scratched with fingernails or metal. A symbol, a star-like mark. The same symbol engraved on Elena's necklace. Ruiz stepped backward in horror. He marked all of them! No, Marlowe said quietly. He marked himself. This was his signature. The truth hit like a brutal weight. Elena hadn't just uncovered a family secret. She had uncovered a serial killer's legacy. And that legacy hadn't died in 1997. Something shifted in the far tunnel. A faint sound. Not animal. Not wind. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Ruiz's hand flew to her weapon. Marlowe raised his light toward the sound. A silhouette stood in the darkness. Tall. Still. Watching. The breath froze in Marlowe's lungs. Because the face emerging from the shadows wasn't Raphael. And it wasn't Miguel. It was a face that should not have existed. A face belonging to a man declared dead 28 years ago. A face that smiled faintly at the sight of them. The father. Alive. Waiting. As if he had always known they would finally come. For a moment, the tunnel forgot to breathe. The air congealed into something thick and metallic, clinging to Marlowe's throat as the figure stepped fully into the spill of the flashlight. His face was hollowed by time, skin stretched thin over sharp cheekbones, hair now a wiry tangle of grey. But the eyes, God, the eyes were unmistakable, cold, watchful, intelligent in the worst possible way. The same eyes that stared out from Raphael's old family photo. The same eyes that belonged to a man officially dead for 28 years. Ruiz's breath stuttered. No, that's impossible. But the figure only tilted his head slightly, as if humbled by the word impossible, as if he had lived long enough in darkness to understand that death certificates were nothing more than paper and ink, fragile things that could be forged, manipulated, rewritten. Marlowe, Ruiz whispered, fingers tightening around her weapon. That's him. The man's voice broke through the air like a crack in stone, soft, raspy, unhurried. You shouldn't be here. Marlowe steadied his stance. And you shouldn't be alive. A faint smile tugged at the man's lips, slow and deliberate, revealing yellowed teeth. Alive, he repeated, tasting the word as if it were a luxury he had long abandoned. People like me don't die. We simply fade. Ruiz's flashlight shook slightly. You're under arrest. He chuckled, a dry, echoing sound that crawled along the tunnel walls. No, I don't think I am. He took a single step forward, and everything inside Marlowe screamed danger. Not just physical threat, something deeper. A predator's presence. Something ancient lived in this man's aura, the same darkness that filled these hidden chambers, the same rot that seeped through decades of silence. You hurt those girls, Marlowe said, voice hardening. You hurt your own niece. The smile vanished. His voice dropped to a whisper. She was going to expose everything. So you killed her. I protected what needed to be protected. Rage surged through Ruiz. She was 21. She was curious. His shoulders lifted in a slow shrug. Curiosity kills. He said it so calmly, like a man stating the weather. Marlowe moved a fraction closer. Miguel told us you were there that night. His expression didn't change. Miguel was always weak, always breaking under pressure. He's dead. Marlowe said sharply. Something flickered in the man's eyes. Not shock, not grief, but annoyance. He should have died sooner. So much trouble from a boy who never learned silence. And Raphael? Ruiz asked. The man sniffed faintly. Raphael talks too much, always did. He confessed. Marlowe said. He took us to Elena. The old man's jaw tensed, the only crack in his composure. Raphael was supposed to seal the tunnel, not invite you in. Marlowe felt the tunnel tilt. You told him to hide her? His smile returned. Wider, darker, filled with the twisted pride of someone who shaped the world with cruelty and believed it. My boys always did what they were told. That's why they lived. And the others? Ruiz said, voice trembling. The bodies in these rooms? He didn't answer. The silence was worse than confession. Marlowe steadied his breathing. You've been hiding down here all these years. Hiding? He mused. No, resting, waiting. For what? Ruiz whispered. For the world to forget. He took another step, and Ruiz raised her gun. Don't move! He paused, eyes flicking to the weapon with mild curiosity. You think a bullet will stop me? He gestured around them. Everything you see here, I built. I survived. I endured. I am the reason that fear still has a face in this town. That ends tonight, Marlowe said. For the first time, real emotion cracked through the man's mask. Anger, hot and sudden. It ends when I say it ends. He lunged. The tunnel erupted. Ruiz fired, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet sparked off concrete as the old man moved with shocking speed for someone his age, diving behind a support beam. Marlowe tackled Ruiz sideways, just as another noise echoed. Metal scraping stone. A lever pulled, a mechanism whining. Then the floor beneath them shifted. A trap. The ground buckled under Marlowe's boots, sending dust clouds spiraling. He grabbed Ruiz's arm, pulling her toward the wall as a section of earth collapsed inward, revealing a deeper shaft. What the hell? Ruiz gasped as they scrambled back. He knows this place better than we do, Marlowe snapped. The old man emerged from the shadows with a rusted pipe in hand, swinging it with brutal force toward Ruiz. Marlowe intercepted, the metal striking his shoulder with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through him. He staggered, teeth clenched. Ruiz fired again, the shot grazing the man's arm. He hissed, more anger than pain, and darted down a side tunnel. Move! Marlowe ordered, ignoring the pain roaring through his shoulder. They pursued him through the labyrinth of concrete arteries, their flashlights bouncing frantically along the walls. The tunnels forked endlessly, echoing footsteps in confusing directions. Every turn felt like a trap waiting to spring. Every shadow felt alive. Left! Ruiz shouted, spotting movement. They charged through another corridor, ducking under hanging roots, boots slipping on damp stone. The temperature dropped, the air thicker, colder. They were descending deeper into the earth, farther from safety, closer to whatever hell this man had crafted. Where is he taking us? Ruiz panted. Somewhere he thinks he has the advantage, Marlowe said. Another noise, metal doors slamming shut somewhere behind them. He's sealing us in. Ruiz realized. We keep moving. Marlowe said. We don't give him what he wants. The tunnel widened suddenly into a large chamber, and then both detectives froze. This room was different, cleaner, deliberate. At the center stood a table, wooden, warped by moisture, but unmistakably used. Straps hung from its sides. Rusted. Stained. Ruiz recoiled. Oh, God! This was where he brought them first, Marlowe said quietly. Before the tunnels, before the graves. A predator's workshop. Another voice drifted behind them. Thin, rasping. I taught them everything they know. Marlowe spun, gun raised. The old man stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, blood seeping down his arm. But his smile was intact. My boys, he said softly. They always tried so hard, but they were never as good as me. Get on the ground, Marlowe barked. He didn't move. She shouldn't have looked into the girl from before. If she hadn't, none of this would have happened. My bloodline would have stayed clean. Your bloodline is soaked in death, Ruiz snapped. It's soaked in purpose, he corrected. He lifted a rusted blade from the table, long, narrow, glinting faintly under the flashlight beams. "Drop it," Marlowe ordered, finger tightening on the trigger. The old man's smile widened. "You won't shoot. People like you never shoot first." He lunged. Ruiz fired. The blast struck him square in the chest. But he didn't fall. He stumbled, staggered, then charged again with a horrifying tenacity born from madness. Marlowe fired twice. The old man finally collapsed, hitting the stone floor with a dull, final thud. The blade clattered away. His body slid partially into the light, his eyes open and empty, staring at nothing. Ruiz stood frozen, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. Marlowe lowered his weapon slowly. It was over, except it wasn't, because as they approached the body, Marlowe noticed something horrifying. The man's lips were curled into a faint smile. Even in death, a smile that said, "I wasn't alone." A smile that said, "You haven't found everything." A smile that said, "The truth is deeper." Ruiz stepped back, voice trembling. "What is that supposed to mean?" Marlowe didn't answer. Not yet, because beyond the chamber, deeper down the final tunnel, something glimmered under the flashlight sweep. A metallic reflection, a shape, a structure. Ruiz followed his gaze. "Detective!" They moved forward slowly. Breaths shallow, heartbeats pounding. The tunnel opened into the largest chamber yet, and in the center of that room stood something they never expected. A door. Heavy. Steel. Rusted but intact. A vault door, with a handprint scanner beside it. Long dead but still connected to something beneath the earth. Ruiz whispered, "What the hell is this?" Marlowe stared at the impossible metal slab, cold realization spilling through him. This wasn't just a hiding place. His voice dropped into a stunned whisper. This was a facility. Behind them, the old man's lifeless smile watched from the floor like a final taunt, and the question hung in the stale, trembling air. What was sealed behind that door, and why had he died smiling at it? For several seconds, the underground chamber held its breath. The steel door towered in front of them like the entrance to a buried world, a mausoleum built not for the dead, but for whatever monsters lived inside a man like Raphael's father. Marlowe stepped closer, fingertips hovering above the cold, rusted surface. A thin layer of dust coated the metal, but beneath it, faint scratches formed a pattern. Drag marks, long and desperate, as if hands had once clawed across the door, searching for a way out. Or a way in? Ruiz swallowed hard. This doesn't look like something one man built. No. Marlowe murmured. It looks like something he discovered. The air vibrated with the weight of that possibility. The handprint scanner beside the door was dead. Its glass was shattered, its wiring chewed through by time. Yet the metal casing underneath was military grade, reinforced with bolts that didn't match the era of the irrigation tunnels. Someone had installed this long after the system was abandoned. Someone with resources, someone with intent. "What the hell was he doing down here?" Ruiz whispered. Marlowe didn't answer. His flashlight beam traced the base of the door. The dirt around it was smoother, more compacted than the rest of the tunnel, a sign of repeated movement. People had walked in and out. Many times. But who? He pressed his ear gently to the steel. Nothing. No movement. No wind. Only an oppressive silence that felt less like emptiness and more like a held breath waiting quietly on the other side. Ruiz shifted nervously. "Should we call for backup? Explosives team? Something?" Marlowe stood rigidly still. "If we bring in more people, we risk contaminating whatever's behind that door. We go slow." He angled his flashlight along the right edge of the door and froze. A fingerprint, dried, visible only because dust had outlined its ridges. But it wasn't human-sized. It was small. A child's. Ruiz's breath hitched. "Detective, what is that?" Marlowe felt a tremor run through him. Proof he wasn't alone. He stepped back, drawing a long breath that felt too heavy for his lungs. "We open it." Ruiz stared at him as if he'd lost his mind. "Open it?" "Marlowe, this place is a tomb. Whatever's behind this door, there's a reason he never let anyone find it. All the more reason to see it." He braced his hands against the wheel lock embedded in the steel, a massive, circular handle corroded with rust. When he pushed, the The metal groaned, a sound so deep it reverberated through the bones in their teeth. Ruiz grabbed the other side, straining with him. Rust cracked. Dust poured from the hinges. Then a shift. A slow, heavy click echoed through the chamber. Marlowe exhaled. It's moving. The door slid open, one agonizing inch at a time, scraping against the concrete floor, releasing a breath of cold air that smelled faintly of chemicals and something older, something like fear lingering too long in stale darkness. When the gap widened enough, Marlowe shined his flashlight inside. Ruiz gasped loudly. The room beyond wasn't a chamber. It was a corridor, a long concrete hallway stretching deeper underground, lit faintly by old emergency bulbs that still flickered with weak, dying light. Marlowe stepped inside first, gun raised, flashlight tight in his grip. Ruiz followed close, every muscle tense. The corridor walls were lined with metal doors, small, square, each with a barred viewing slot, like something out of an asylum built beneath the earth. Some doors were shut, others hung ajar. One lay on the ground, torn from its hinges. A breeze drifted through the hallway, carrying a faint music of rattling metal and something else. An almost imperceptible hum. Ruiz whispered, "What did he use these rooms for?" Marlowe didn't want to say it, but the evidence painted its own picture. Containment, he murmured. They reached the first open door. Inside was a small room barely larger than a closet. A metal cot, shackles bolted to the wall, a water bucket in the corner. Scratch marks coated the stone, hundreds of them, layered, frantic, each one carved by someone desperately trying to count the days or claw through their own terror. Ruiz staggered back. "He kept people down here!" Marlowe moved to the next room. The next, each one worse than the one before. In one, a broken chain hung from the ceiling. In another, a wooden stool lay overturned beside a pile of discarded clothing. And in the fourth room, something that made Ruiz drop her flashlight. A notebook, old, mold-stained, its pages warped but intact. Marlowe knelt and lifted it carefully. Inside were lists, dates, names, ages, all female, some marked with an X, some circled, some underlined in frantic strokes. Ruiz covered her mouth. He was keeping records. Marlowe flipped to the last page, and the air left his lungs. A final name, scrawled in large, trembling letters. Elena Marquez, Act 3, underlined twice. Ruiz whispered, "He planned it. He planned her." Marlowe kept scanning the page. Below her name was a single sentence, written in a different pen, shakier, like someone else wrote it. "This one knows. This one ruins everything." A chill ran through Marlowe's spine. He closed the notebook. "We go deeper." They followed the corridor until it curved sharply downward. At the end stood another door, smaller, less reinforced. When Marlowe touched it, it creaked open easily. Inside was a large circular room, and at its center, a table. A proper table this time. Metallic. Clean. Not decayed like the others. Under a flickering bulb, items were arranged neatly across its surface. Trophies, rings, bracelets, locks of hair, Polaroids, scraps of clothing folded with unnatural care, a row of labeled jars, each containing something preserved in yellowing fluid. Ruiz backed away. "Oh God! Oh God!" But Marlowe stepped forward, scanning the objects one by one. Many belonged to victims they'd already identified from the tunnel chambers. Others were unknown, faces missing from the official record of disappearances. Then he saw a jar labeled with a name he recognized instantly. Elena. Inside was a fragment of her necklace, the missing piece they never recovered. Ruiz started crying, not loudly, softly, like someone whose will had cracked under the crushing weight of too much horror. "This man," she whispered. "This man wasn't just a killer. He was building something. A collection." Marlowe's voice hollowed. "A legacy." On the far wall, something else caught his eye. Photographs pinned in rows, just like Raphael's house. But these weren't of his victims. They were of his sons, Miguel, Raphael. A younger Miguel crying in a corner. A younger Raphael holding the same rusted blade found in the workshop above. both boys kneeling beside their father in the hills, both boys learning, watching, obeying. Ruiz wiped her face. He groomed them. No, Marlowe said darkly. He weaponized them. Then his flashlight beam caught something even worse, a diagram, sketched across the wall in thick black pencil, lines connecting names, dates, locations, tunnels, an entire network of crimes spanning decades, notes scribbled like a madman's manifesto. At the center of the diagram was one shape, a star, the same symbol engraved on Elena's necklace, the same symbol carved into the tunnels. Ruiz's voice cracked. This wasn't random, this wasn't impulse, this was ritual. Marlowe stepped back, heart pounding. This was doctrine. Suddenly, a distant clatter echoed from the far end of the corridor. Ruiz swung around. What was that?